Stone, you've got pennies in your pocket, you've got nothing in the bank, the creditors are calling, you're behind on your promises. And he says, here's how that occurs. You've attracted, up until now, you've attracted the things to you because of the person you've become. Now I said, well, how can I change all that? He said, very simple. If you will change, everything will change for you. You don't have to change what's outside. All you've got to change is what's inside. To have more, you simply have to become more. And then he said, don't wish it was easier, wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems, wish for more skills. Start working on yourself, making these personal changes. And he said, it'll all change for you.
Welcome to Independent Conclusions. Today we're going to go ahead and cover the illusion of money. When you talk about what's real and what's fake, fake security versus true security, or having true assurance against any crisis financially, you know. We're just gonna go ahead and just jump right in real quick.
If I asked you the question, what is man's greatest invention? What would your answer be? There's a lot of options. Would it be fire? Because it gives us warmth, protection, and the ability to cook our meals. Or perhaps you would pick the wheel, because it's the driving force behind the beginnings of trade, commerce, and travel. While both of these are excellent choices, most of the time when we think about the greatest inventions of mankind, we tend to forget one of the most important ones of all: money.
So off the bat, it's starting off pointing out the fact that money is an invention of man, one of man's many inventions. And so just like we have inventions that help us and have pros and cons, and we know how to go back to the origin of what we did and how things operated before the invention, right? Just in case the invention failed, or we want to sometimes even go back to a more organic way of doing things, right? So as far as purchasing, trading, and everything like that, started out with the bartering system. And that's why now as the dollar falls and you see a transition of currency, you know, some might say the goal is for there to remain a quote-unquote fake currency. They say that we probably can have more control without the dollar, without different people being in our money, in the funds. But at the same time, it's like you hear the perspective of it being a thing of control when it comes down to the money. A digital currency, right, versus where every dollar is, you know, being able to be seen. You know, it's not like you can hide away and stash some money, per se, unless it's gold or silver, universal money, real money, has been here since the beginning.
But unlike man's other great inventions, money is immaterial. Maybe that's why we don't often think of it in the same breath as some of the other great inventions. Things like fire and the wheel are tangible, but not money. Money is merely an idea, an illusion whose value is non-existent, only determined by the importance we place on it. Or at least money as we know it today. However, the fact that money is an illusion does not in any way undermine its importance. Before we created money, we were forced to trade goods and services directly in what we refer to as the barter system, people exchanging goods and services for other goods and services in return. Because there was no arbitrary value placed on these items, every single trade was determined by what each party was willing to give up for something that they wanted. It was kind of like a game. If I wanted some of your vegetables for dinner, but I only reared cattle, I would have to give you one of my animals in exchange for a bag of vegetables. If I wanted shoes to wear, but I only made tents, I would have had to give you an entire tent in exchange for a pair of shoes. And immediately you can already see one of the major problems with this system of trade. It's the asymmetry. As a tent maker, there's no way I wouldn't feel cheated having to exchange an entire living space for simple footwear. Because there was no standardized medium of exchange, it was very difficult to get two people who needed things from each other to come to an agreement.
So when you have a problem that comes up, like we had problems come up as far as trading, like they're speaking of, this is when someone is going to solve this problem. You talk about soft skills, leadership is one of them. Someone is going to have, the ability to take the lead, and then another soft skill is problem solving. Everybody can do hard skills. Anybody can learn a hard skill, but being able to have soft skills to the point of leading or you coming up with the solution and solving the problem. But if you just want somebody else to solve it, just fix this problem. Someone, I guess a savior, looking for a savior. Someone fix this problem. And then you get what you ask for. And if you don't like the solutions other people have came up with, you come up with more solutions. Now we know that there's people that have came up, with solutions in a certain way that they've done it. Kennedy, I believe, and Gaddafi, and the list goes on. I'm trying to back money by gold or make greenbacks, etc., etc. Still to this day, people are working to fix this money problem. That's why you see new forms of currency, but it's like ultimately you are in charge of fixing your own problems as far as your financial problems and making sure that you're secure, truly secure, because a lot of people don't like to have discussions about money, but there's a psychological element to money. It's a mental aspect and personality and character, that's involved with how money is even perceived and dealt with. They say the more money you get, the more highlight who you are, and it tells a story.
Each other to come to an agreement. Having to wait until a double coincidence of once where two people need the exact opposite thing at the same time was also very difficult and inefficient. And that wasn't all. You see, our money is not only a medium of exchange, it's also considered a store of value. And before the invention of money, some people could never store their wealth for no fault of their own. Think about the farmer who sells tomatoes and the man who makes tents. The man who makes tents can create an entire village of real estate and barter it out with anyone who needs a place to rest their head all year long, and he would probably cash out on that. But the farmer who sells tomatoes can only barter when tomatoes are in season. And because tomatoes are perishable goods, he cannot keep them for a long period of time. So, although he would be putting in the same effort into his business as the tent maker, there's absolutely no way for him to remain wealthy all year long. There's also the problem of having something that only very few people want. Nowadays, when starting a business, you're often told to find a niche, a small group of people who are very interested in what you have to offer. Before money was a thing, that advice would have you left with nothing worth bartering. The people who had the most were those who owned things that everyone wanted. Things like weapons, animal skin, and salt. But then since everyone knew that everyone wanted these things, they started buying them even if they didn't need them at the time, just so they could trade with them later. And so commodity money became a thing. People would exchange goods and services for the most common items, like salt or weapons, and just use that to trade for what they want from someone else. From salt and weapons to tiny collectibles like shells and beads, humanity had found a better way to trade and transact. Instead of exchanging goods and services for goods and services you may not need at the time, you can exchange your goods and services for arbitrary objects to act as placeholders of value, an IOU, or IOU. After that, you can use these placeholders to get goods and services you actually want from someone else. The idea was brilliant, so brilliant that the entire world slowly moved away from the barter system to the money trading system.
So things got to a point where they figured out that the most desired items by the majority could be used as something that you can buy at certain times even when you don't need it, because it's a product that you can use to barter with in more smaller portions, and the smaller portions have value, right? That you can barter with in that way instead of bartering with the thing that you actually create, right? Or just whether than bartering with a whole bed that you made, or bartering with a whole couch, giving up a whole setup of something that you create, right? For something like some shoes and bartering. You can see how this led to using valuable metals and how it evolved to even coming up with a currency or coming up with something that everybody can use.
But there was still one problem with this medium of exchange. You see, for money to be worth anything, it needs to be scarce. The more available something is, the lesser its implied value. That's basic economics. If everyone can get their hands on something, it can't be worth that much, right? So things like sand or shells that you could easily pick up on any beach weren't really a good measure of value. As a result, around the year 770 BC, the first metal coins were created in China. As a sort of homage, the Chinese made miniature versions of the tools that were once regarded as currency. They made the coins circular so that it was easy to reach into your pocket and take them out without hurting your fingers. Then they cast the coins in bronze. This was it. Money was finally worth something. You couldn't just go to a beach somewhere and pick up bronze. It was scarce. It had value. At this time, money wasn't yet an illusion. The value of a coin was determined by the value of the metal the coin was made out of. If you had a coin that was made from 1 gram of gold, it was worth 1 gram of gold. You could easily measure it and see for yourself that it is, in fact, 1 gram of gold. However, kings and rulers quickly discovered the power of money. They realized that the more of these tiny precious metals you had, the more power you could control. And so in 600 BC, Alyattes, king of Lydia, created the first official money mint. He created the coins using a mix of silver and gold, and stamped an image on the coin to act as denominations. Now people could easily tell the value of the piece of metal they were holding simply by looking at the picture on its face. But the kings of the world wanted more money, and precious metals were too expensive. To produce more money, they started slimming down the coins, then mixing the more expensive metals with cheaper metals. Soon, all the coins in circulation were worth less than what the image on their face said they were worth, and so the illusion of money was born. The value of the coin was no longer determined by the...
So they changed the thickness of the money, and everything was made based on the actual value and thickness, and whatever metal that they used for the money and whatever said on it, everything was precise. But then they started thinning it out because of cost. But that's money. Money is value even right now. Like, the fact that the dollar is not real, it's like, you still have to buy silver and gold to this day. Actual silver and gold to actually secure yourself against any crash of any form of currency other than silver and gold. Or, God's money from the earth.
The value of the metal. The value of the coin was now simply what the rulers in the bank said it was. So 1 British pound sterling represented 1 pound of sterling silver. However, when international trade became a thing, people realized that metal coins were too heavy to lug around. And so kings around the world started issuing IOU certificates for long-distance trading. Because these pieces of paper were stamped by the king, people trusted its value and believed that they could use it to get back whatever it was worth in coins. And that was true for the time being. As more of these IOU certificates flooded the market, people needed coins less and less. Until finally, the paper was worth what we believed it was worth, even if we no longer exchanged it for physical pieces of gold and silver. From ancient kings to modern-day governments and central banks, money has remained an illusion, a mere representation whose value is determined by the importance people place on it. The most valuable banknote in circulation today is the 10,000 Singapore dollars note. Although not being produced anymore, this single piece of paper worth 7,345 US dollars at the moment is still regarded as a legal tender. So you can still use it to buy things, valuable things like houses, cars, and even metals like gold. The banknote itself costs less than 20 cents to produce, but the illusion of the fiat currency system means it's as valuable as 120 grams of gold. Fiat is the fancy word we use to describe the modern day illusion. It's a Latin word that translates to "let it be done." The illusion of money is one that we never really think about.
Legal tender or illegal tender? Like I said, a Latin word, fiat, that we know of. Let it be done, based on what you believe, based on what we say it's gonna be, based on what we call it. That's what it's gonna be, you know?
But just like the kings of old, the governments of today understand the power of money and, as always, want more of it. They know that the more of these pieces of paper you have, the more power you have. So what do? Well, they can simply create more pieces of paper out of thin air. Yes, if, for example, the United States government wanted $340 million for, I don't know, maybe another F-22 jet, they can simply print the money to do so. But there's one problem with this: inflation. The thing about money is that primarily,
inflation, man, just popping up and talking about the mind and the emotions and the body, all that, as well as when you talk about money.
It needs to be a means of exchange to be considered valuable. So the amount of money in circulation needs to reflect the output of the goods and services that are being produced. When more money is printed than there are goods and services, all other things being equal, the prices of these goods and services increase and the value of the money itself drops. This is why many economists, and even everyday people like you and me, are worried about the current global reserve currency, the United States dollar. 2020 was a terrible year for the entire world. In the wake of the pandemic, most economies had to be shut down. The goods and services available and the general output of the economy was reduced to mere trickles, and the world kind of came to a halt for a while. Because there wasn't as much money flowing around, to keep the economy from going under and basically our world falling apart, the US government started printing money at a rate faster than has ever been printed before in its entire existence. Right now, 40% of the US dollars in existence today were printed in the last 18 months alone. That's outrageous. And because the output of the country hasn't really increased by that much, eventually, the prices of the goods and services might start to skyrocket. You can see this taking place in the price of commodities, such as lumber, which had as much as tripled in price from just a year ago. If you haven't noticed, some of the prices of the things at your favorite restaurants are now slightly higher than they were last year. It's an ever so small increase. Maybe the guac at Chipotle is 20 cents higher, but it's happening right there under your nose. On the surface, it seems like a good thing that governments decided to send out stimulus and unemployment checks to their citizens. But the reality is, it's a double-edged sword. Of course, it helps those most in need, and that's a good thing. We're at the point where, because of inflation and a slowed economy, people really aren't able to get the right jobs at the right times.
That's why the reason why you would get a job or create your own work is because you're thinking long term. And even if you took that money, you would take it and do something with it that could set you up.
Before 2020, the United States was $29 trillion in debt. It's an unbelievable and inconceivable amount of money to even begin with. This debt is...
But the dollar is backed by debt, though. That's what it's backed by. It's not backed by gold or silver anymore. It's backed by debt.
Is obtained in the form of bonds and treasury notes, which are basically just pieces of paper that say the government will pay you so-and-so amount plus interest. Right now, a 10-year US Treasury bond will return you about 1.23% on your investment at expiry. So if you put in $1,000 today, you'll have made $12.30 by 2031. sounds terrible already, but to add icing onto the cake, it doesn't even keep up with inflation, which is targeted to stay around 2% a year. It's a lot higher than that, but that's for another time. By investing in government notes of your own country, which issues the currency you use every single day, you actually lose buying power over a decade. It is weakened by the day. But regardless, banks, businesses, and individuals around the world buy these bonds and treasury notes, and the government uses all that money it gets back how it sees fit. However, when it's time for the government to pay its debt, all the money they made has already been spent. So they buy back all the treasuries and bonds, but only from the big financial institutions, and then pay them back with new money created out of thin air. Since March 2020, the Federal Reserve has bought back over $1 trillion in bonds, and is planning to continue to do so for the foreseeable future. With all the new money pumped into them by the government, banks can now give out more loans to people, earn more interest, and help grow the economy. But this increases the total amount of money in circulation, reducing the value of each dollar. With multi-trillion-dollar stimulus payments and infrastructure packages, it makes you wonder how long this stuff can go on for. New money steals value from old money. The amount in your bank account doesn't change, but because of the new money the government has just printed out of thin air, your money is no longer valuable as it once was. Basically, every second you store your wealth in any fiat currency, such as the US dollar, it is being devalued.
New money steals value from old money. New money steals value from old money. Whenever they printing all this new money, it's like they printed 40% of the money that we got now in the last 18 months. It's ridiculous.
Basically, every second you store your wealth in any fiat currency, such as the US dollar, it is being devalued. You could stare at your bank balance, and day by day, you'll be able to buy less and less things with whatever you have left. The reality that money is nothing but an illusion is one that we must all embrace, because only then will the path to financial freedom become clearer. It's all a game that never truly ends.
And please let me tell you right now, the perfect time to tell you at this point. That is my main purpose is showing this video or this content. I could talk about it all day, but it is so that way we can see a clear path, not an illusion, to financial freedom.
Understanding that money does not have any intrinsic value in itself, but instead only inherits the value we give to it, will prevent you from trying to store up your wealth in currency. Instead, using that money to acquire assets that will appreciate faster than inflation is the only way to win the game. And it's not really winning, it's avoiding total loss.
Acquiring assets that appreciate faster than inflation. Okay? That's the name of the game. Take the expenses down, take the money up. Learn how to use other people's money. Make sure you create a security or insurance nest for yourself with silver and gold.
As more and more money is printed each and every day, the value of each dollar in your pocket will continue to decrease. But the dollar value of the assets around the globe will continue to appreciate in value. But it's all a mirage, it's smoke and mirrors. A stock market that is literally in up-only mode may make it seem like it's all okay. But it isn't. It's all denominated in the same currency that is slowly dying each and every day. For example, if you were to denominate the Dow Jones, which is just a performance measurement of 30 large United States companies, in terms of gold instead of USD, you'll see that we're basically at the same place we were in 1997. Smoke and mirrors. But what's the end goal of all of this? With fiat and an unlimited supply of money, will the value of each currency just continue to decrease until the end of time? Will the gap between the rich and poor just continue to grow wider and wider? Or are we finally going to fix a problem as old as man itself, and stop placing our financial success in the hands of those who are destroying it day by day? Only time will tell. But just know, there is a way out.
You don't want to have that fake money. Watch out.
Got no time to waste, hustling, nature flipping. The time, never disengage, I can read your mind. Let me speak to your soul, all in. I got moves to make it last. Authentic, authentic. Yeah. Never disengage, I can read your mind. I can read your mind. Let me speak to your soul, all in. I got moves to make it last, authentic.
Life is all about perspectives. Is it love or obsession? All this lust and aggression. She said she in love with me now. Tomorrow she putting me out. I don't respond to your texts. You blow my phone up protected. Every time you get angry, little mama, you get reckless. The way that you talk to me has something to do with the way that you feel. I am your reflection. Baby, just look in the mirror. I know this changing moons, manipulating your emotions. I know this changing moons, manipulating your emotions. I know sometimes the way I show you love gets confusing, but